What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Beck Check podcast. I just had a wonderful conversation with my friend and colleague, Lisa Federico. We talked all about her journey as a math teacher. We talked about forming positive math identities within students. And lastly, Lisa shares an awesome collaborative group work activity that teachers everywhere can apply to their own practice. I hope you all enjoy this conversation just as much as I did. Thank you for being the second ever person on my podcast. That's really exciting. So why don't you go
Awesome. I'm
ahead?
so glad.
Yeah, awesome. Why don't you go ahead, just kind of introduce yourself, just share a little bit about like who you are, what you've been teaching, and yeah, just a little bit about that.
Sounds good. Well, I'm Lisa Federico, and I work at Mountain View High School in Tucson, and I teach Algebra 1. Um, I've been teaching high school for this is my eighth year teaching, and but I taught 3 years prior to that as an elementary teacher. So yeah,
Okay,
really
what would you
excited.
say are like some of the biggest differences you've noticed from teaching elementary and teaching high school?
Oh heavens. Well, elementary school, I had to teach everything. I had to teach, history, English, math, everything, social studies. And because I taught at a parochial school, I had to teach religion on top of that. So it was a lot of stuff, that we had to teach on a daily basis. But it's really nice because the school I came from, because I've only been at Mountain View for 2 years, the school I came from, I actually had to teach everything because I was the only math teacher.
Mm,
So at that high school level, I had to teach, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, and financial math. So having only algebra 1 to do is a really nice change of pace, So
right. Yeah. Do you feel like you got better at math from having to teach all those different math classes? Like, walk me through that.
well, it's funny because I never thought of myself as really good in math. Never.
Mm,
I always did well in math, but I was never, that's why I went to elementary teaching because I never thought that I'd be able to do the secondary level of math, because I never had to go past college algebra, and I felt that it was something that, I never really aspired to until I made that decision to go back to work as a teacher because I actually took about 2 years off of teaching because
mm,
I didn't do as well in the elementary school as I thought. And I'm like, well, maybe this isn't God's plan for me. I'm very
hmm.
religious. And so I'm like, maybe this isn't God's plan. I'm going to go to something else. And so I did retail for a couple years and that didn't obviously pan out either.
Right.
So I decided to jump back into the teaching realm and, um, so as far as the math was concerned, you know, I was an assistant for a year before I became an official math teacher. And it was nice because I was able to kind of see, I was kind of learning with the kids, like relearning all of the concepts, all of the vocabulary, the terms, you name it. I had to relearn it. And it was nice though. It was really nice to be a student basically again, with them and to see their eureka moments and it refueled my desire to be a teacher. And
Mm.
so it was nice to it was nice to kind of be in that realm as a student slash teacher at the time and become that teacher that I always wanted to be.
That is
So
awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Lisa, I never would have guessed that because I feel like all the time,
yeah.
whenever we work on math
Yeah.
problems, you're usually the first one who knows the answer. Or if I get stuck on a college algebra thing, I'll come over. I'm like, Lisa, how do you solve this like radical equation? How do you do this? And then you're like, oh, this is what you do. So I never would have guessed that. So that's really interesting.
You know, kind of getting back to that, like when you were, anytime anybody asks me, like now it all comes back to me, so it's been because now that I've been immersed in it for these 8 years, it's kind of like, oh yeah, this is easy, and
Mm,
but it was really hard to grasp some of those concepts in the beginning, especially with the financial algebra, because I had never had to really do anything with loans, really. I
mm,
didn't have to do a lot of those. higher level math or anything, even as a college algebra student. So I struggled, with that along with the kids. But it was nice though to like I said to get through that. And um I actually thought maybe math teaching wasn't for me for a while because
Mm,
uh when I was at the other school, I would go to other, conferences and stuff, and all these teachers would be way above me as far as like how they do their math. I mean, like even right now, I mean, you say that I help you, and honestly, you help me, like, and all of you do, everybody in our team, because there's times when I'm gonna have to stop my video for a minute just to keep
oh,
the
sure.
the internet going.
That's fine.
um but basically it's like I've gotten to a point where, I never thought I was good at it. And so when I had other people basically telling me, when I was younger, like, oh, she's never going to get this, and it was really
Mm,
disheartening, as a student, to say, okay, well, I know I'll probably never be a math teacher, like a high school math teacher, but I can do elementary. That's easy, So that's why I went into elementary teaching, because I was like, oh, I'm not smart enough for, like doing just English or just history or just math, or, so that's why I always thought elementary teaching was going to be better for me.
mm. Wow. That's so interesting. Well, thanks for your vulnerability there. It's so interesting. I feel kind of like when you were talking about how you were relearning some of the math alongside your students. I definitely feel that way teaching the college algebra class this year. And there's definitely been times where I feel like I'm making a mistake or I'm doing something wrong. And as a teacher, right, you get really nervous, like making a mistake in front of the students. But what I've found more often than not, they tend to be really understanding of that. Do you ever feel like that, making a mistake in front of students?
Oh, heavens, yes. Yeah. And in fact, because I was kind of in your boat last year, with teaching the
Mm-hmm.
college algebra kiddos, and they were so far ahead of me. Like they knew calculus and trig, and like everything was a breeze for them. But anytime that we would go to solve something, especially like if I hadn't ever learned the concept or I didn't remember what it was, man, they were right there saying, "Oh, miss, it goes this way. This is what you do." And they're very understanding, and they're just awesome kids all the way around. And so I'm sure you feel the same way, that they just have this innate ability to problem solve and to kind of walk through those problems with you, and they don't just give you the answer. They're just like, no, this is how you do it, so they're really good about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Like coming along with beside the students as learners too. Uh,
Yes.
so tell me, what's something positive from the school year that you would have to share?
Well, I would have to say, I had one student who, in the very beginning, she came. I have several students that do this on a day, not a daily basis, but every year. I always have one or two students do this, but this was a really good success story. She came to me and she looked at me. She's like, Miss, I just can't do math. I can't do it. Like she just had this in her mind that she could not do it because she got such bad grades, in seventh and eighth grade in middle school. And she's like, I just can't do it, miss. I don't know what it is, but I just can't do it. And, she struggled in the beginning. She didn't do well on tests, and she gave, she did like maybe C's and D's, maybe if she was lucky, last semester. And this semester, she is rocking it. Like something has
Mm.
clicked, and she is just on top of things. She knows the answer and it's correct. And she just has this. She's like, Miss, I can't believe it. I'm actually getting an A in class, and my parents think I'm actually cheating. And I'm like,
Huh.
no, no one's cheating. You're doing fabulous. You're doing this on your own. You're figuring it out. And she's helping her other classmates. She just feels more confident, and it's just beautiful to me to see when students have that eureka moment, and they have that, it just clicks, and they're like, oh, I got this. This is not a problem. I can do this without a problem.
Mm.
So that was something positive I wanted to share.
Oh, that is awesome. When was that moment that you noticed the change?
I would have to say it was probably right after winter break.
Mm.
We started a new lesson, a new unit, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, miss, I think I got this." And I
Mm,
said, "Well, show me. Like, what do you know?" And she showed me, and I said, "You got it, girl. This is what you've been practicing. This is." She's like, "I can't believe this. I know this." Like she felt so alive, and she was so positive, because before she just had this, it felt like a cloud hanging over her head, like, "Oh, I can't ever do this. I'm never going to be good enough." And man, when she got it, she got it. And I'm just kind of helping her fuel that desire. And even if she makes a wrong turn, as they say, we can turn her back to the right way of thinking, and that's what I tell the kids. If you're on the right path. So anytime that you're learning math, you're always on the right path. It's just figuring out which direction it is to get to the right answer, so
mm,
you have like a diverging road, and you have one road coming onto, where you're on the right track to answering correctly, but then, you know, you're not quite there yet. And I love your "not yet."
mm,
That's your lovely phrase. And that's perfect, because they don't have the answer yet, but they're getting there, and that's what I remind them. They're getting there.
mm. Right. I feel like that's so important, right? Like learning in progress of all these things. Because all of us, we had to learn it at some point, and it takes time. And that phrase, "just not yet." Yeah, that's definitely a favorite, even when we're playing vid ball or doing something else. You
Oh,
know, I,
yes.
I mean, even taking some of these graduate classes, I have to remind myself of that, right? Just not yet, having
Yes.
that patience with myself, or even as teachers, we can sit back at the end of the day and think about, oh, maybe this lesson didn't go great. Just not
Yeah.
yet, right? I can make this lesson better in the
Right.
future.
I was just going to say that, it's always good to have a positive person to kind of reinforce, that you're on the right track. And honestly, my husband, right before we got married, we were engaged at the time, and he's like, "Honey, why don't you try and become a teacher again?" And I said, "Sweetie, I just don't feel like I can do it." And he's like, "No, you know how to teach. I've seen you do it. I've seen you work through your lesson plans, and how much you're so passionate about helping the kids and doing the right thing." And he's like, "Why don't you try it? Why don't you just go for it and see if you even pass the test?" And it took me 3 times to pass that math test, but man, I passed it. And when I did, I just was like, yes, I felt this like strength I've never felt before. And it's all because of him giving me that reassurance that I can do it. And so I think, like what you've seen with your students and with my students, and I think with most students, if you give them that extra positivity and that positive reinforcement that, you know, you're almost there, we're getting there, it's not easy, but we can get it together. And I think giving them that extra support gets them to that final destination, as they say,
Hmm.
you know.
Dang, Lisa, I feel inspired right now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. I was kind of thinking about this too, seeing that transition from winter break, right? We have that first semester math, and then second semester, a lot of it might be new to the students, right? Because it seems like first semester, so much of that might be eighth grade where they learn it
Mhm.
with maybe a few tweaks. Maybe we go a little more in depth, but then second semester, I mean, they've probably seen some functions and function notation before, but it seems like we do start to teach new material. I can't help but think, I wonder if that might have something to do with it.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. It's that, you know where they're getting to know us as teachers and how we present the information to them. And also, like you said, you have some review of the information, but not, it's not quite there, like
Mm-hmm.
it's different. Like we present it slightly different than what their eighth grade teachers may have presented it, and so it feels new to them, even though it's not new. And then when it comes to that switch, I think a lot of them, maybe it's a maturity thing too. It may just
Mm-hmm.
be a maturity thing, but I've seen just that, where they're realizing, "Oh, I got this. I have a good feel for just high school in general. I got a good, group of friends and people to support me. I have good teachers who are there to help me." And maybe they just have that mindset again, to that, "Hey, I can do this." And so they reinforce that with that break, and say, "Oh, you know what? I know what I'm doing now. I got this, one step at a time, one day at a time. And they just seem to have a better outlook, I think, in general, as freshmen getting to that point.
Right. That's what I love about teaching math to freshmen, right? It seems like we have such a pivotal point. Like you said, maybe in middle school, math really wasn't for me, but it seems like if we can just get them back, like you said, you talked about these different diverging roads. If we can get them back on track their freshman year, how much more is that going to benefit them for the rest of high school? So I
Right.
really see our job as like freshman algebra one is so, so important to the rest of their math career. So, what is something that in your classroom that you've done that has either worked well for you or there that you've liked?
I did have a project that I had the kids do. It was a really simple project, where when we were learning about inequalities and solving inequalities, as like, with a like y equals, or not y equals, I'm sorry, like like X is less than or equal to 4, or something like that as an answer. And so, but basically what I did was I had them in groups of 4, and I gave them each cards that had a different problem on it, or they thought it was a different problem. I had it on a different color, so some of them didn't realize it was the same problem they were working on. But so I tricked them a little bit, but that's okay. So they were all working on this one problem on a slate on their own, and working through the problem and how to solve it and solving it. And then I had them graph it, and then I had them share it with their teammates, and they're like, oh, it was the same answer, like they kind of they were really excited. They're like, oh, it was the same problem, but they may have they solved it slightly different. And so what I had them do after that, I had them work together as a team, and they had 4 roles. The first role was a moderator. So moderator, so this the whole point was to make a poster of, like how they solved the problem, and how it was, and how to graph it, and things like that. And so the moderator, their job was to basically keep everybody on track, watch the time, and also reread the instructions if somebody didn't know what to do. Then we had the scribe, who actually did the solving of the problem. So, like, they did the step by step solving. Then we had a justifier who justified each step. And then we had the architect who, basically did the drawing on the poster. So, like, the title and also the graph. And then
Mm.
the moderator, at the very end, when all the groups were done, they did the presentation. And so it was really neat to see how they work together in a team. I will modify it next year a little bit to give the moderator a little bit more work to do, I guess is a good way to put it, because they started
Mm.
getting a little off task, but that was okay. I mean, kids are kids, so
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah.
yeah.
But everything that we do, we always have to modify it based on how the kids are working through different problems and such. But uh, it was nice because right after we got done with that project and the presentation, the kids had such pride in it. Like they really took their time on the title. They did a lot of cool coloring, and they separate each of the parts so that each person had their part on the poster. So the scribe had one area, the justifier had an area, the architect had an area, and then the moderator did the talking through it. Um, but like I said, I'm gonna justify, or I'm gonna modify that next year a little bit. But they came up to me and they're like, Miss, I love this kind of stuff. We should do this more often, because they all worked together and they were using crayons and markers. And so I think it kind of got them back to their elementary school days. And plus I have a lot of artists in the classroom, so they like to work with their, work with drawings and things, so that was really nice to see them all collaborate together.
Absolutely. Do you feel like the group roles helped in that collaboration?
I do, because like I said, I will have to modify it a little bit next year, but
Mm.
them having a specific role and knowing exactly what their job is, it gives them that sense of, hey, I need to do my part before somebody else can do their part. Like it's kind of like what we do as a team, even in, in not only in college, but in any job that you go to. Everybody has a different role that they have to play in order for things to get done. Even if you like work at McDonald's, the cashier has to do their job before the, person at the has to make the sandwiches or put down the fries or, or hand it out the window. There's all these different levels of roles that everybody plays in order for us to get to the same, end result.
Mm, gotcha. How did you structure the presentations? Did one group share, then another group share, or how did you go about that?
Yeah, basically I had everybody go up to the front because I know there's a lot of kids that are really they have this anxiety when they're up there by themselves, and so I
Mm,
had all the whole group go up there while the moderator did the presentation. So like one or two of them held up the poster, and then the moderator walked through the process of how they solved it and how why they graphed it the way they did.
gotcha. So they were solving like so it was one variable inequality, and
Correct.
then they graphed it like on a number line.
Hmm.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
awesome. And now,
Yeah.
of course, I'm assuming each group in the class had a different equation, right?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah, each group had a different equation. So it was nice to see. And then when we hung them up on the walls, the kids were like, "Hey, that's the one we did." And oh, I liked how they did that poster and or how they did those colors or so they were not only kind of prideful of theirs, they're like, oh, ours looks better, or whatever. But
Right.
it was nice to see because I didn't have them put their names on the front of it. It just had like, for example, second hour and then alpha team or whatever
Okay.
team name it was. And so I didn't have them put their names on the front of it. I had them put it on the back. This way, just in case again you have any kids that are like, oh, I don't want to put my name on anything and everybody to see it, they feel a little bit more pride, like, oh, I know what they did, and so they were able to look at it almost like a museum piece, a museum artwork, like, oh, this
Totally.
looks really cool. So
That's really interesting. How did the timing go when you were doing it? Do you feel like you had enough time to get through everything you wanted? Did you need more time? Talk to me about that.
yeah, so as far as the solving that first solving thing that I had them do prior to doing the poster, I think they had plenty of time to do that individually. And
Mm,
then when they came together as a team, that's when they had to, figure out who was going to do what role and how that was going to play out because everybody has a different um they have a different not necessarily personality, but they like to do something different. Somebody's really good at writing, for example, and they have really good handwriting. So that person tended to be the scribe, or the justifier. Somebody was really good at finding mistakes, and so somebody else had that role. So it was nice to hear the kids saying, I'm really strong in this. Maybe I can contribute this way. And so it was nice to hear the kids working through that. And as far as timing was concerned, that part actually went by pretty smoothly. What took a little bit longer was, again, I had a lot of artists in the classroom. So you had some teams that were done really fast because they were the ones that were, just basically had, just the writing with the markers and then they were done. Like they didn't
right.
care about the colors or anything. Then you had others that were really specific on their titles and their graphs and everything was really colorful. So you had ones that were more detailed than others. So that was the part that I probably should have reined in either a little bit or gave them a
Mm,
little bit more time,
okay.
depending on the group.
That makes sense. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Well, that's so cool. That's definitely re-inspiring me to get more student work up on the walls, right? Kind of what you're talking about, that sense of ownership or just that
Mhm.
sense of belonging in the room. Oh, Mrs. Federico put my work up on the wall. Can you just
Mhm.
imagine as a student walking into your classroom and seeing that, that's probably really encouraging for them.
Yeah, and what's nice is that this particular thing that I had created, this little project, can actually be, you can use it for pretty much anything. Like you can adapt it for, just regular solving equations. You could adapt it for even geometry or quadratics or even logarithms, any of those type of things that you have to graph after you solve.
Hmm.
Um, you can adopt it for pretty much any grade level, which is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Lisa, I think that's all I had. Any final thoughts?
I'm just really thankful that you had me on and I appreciate it. I hope this, helps other teachers or even just other people that are listening in to, just realize that, you know, even if you don't think you're good at math, you're going to be great at it eventually. So just keep on working at it. So,
Awesome. Well, I can't think of a better way to end. So Lisa, thank you very much for being on the Beck Check podcast. I really appreciate it.
all right. Thanks, Elliot. Take care.